Welcome to another lesson from Blind Accessibility Tips. Today we are looking at creating tables in Microsoft Word. Let's jump right in. Okay, so remember that this lesson and other lessons teaching blind and visually impaired persons how to use their computers can be found on blindaccessibilitytips.com. The link for this lesson will be found in the description, but you can go to the website and look for other lessons teaching a blind person how to use their computers, beginning from lessons such as navigating, Windows in general, and file management, as well as how to use Microsoft Word. And it also teaches you how to use the internet, right? So go there and look on how you can get to do these things as a blind and visually impaired person using mostly the screen reader NVDA. All right, let's get into today's lesson. All right, so creating tables. You may want to use a table to help you organize your information. A table really is just to present information and organize information in a different way that might be more easily usable by persons, right? In fact, on the Blind Accessibility Tips website, most of the lessons at the bottom has a table which outlines keystrokes pertaining to that lesson and their functions, right? So you must check out those tables when you go to each lesson. It helps you to put the keystrokes in perspective and helps you to remember them, right? So you may want to use a table for a purpose such as that one, or to create a calendar or a timetable, whatever it is, you may need to create a table. Now, creating a table in Microsoft Word is very easy. 1, 2. All right, so let us start. We're going to use our main ribbon. And as usual, of course, to access our main ribbons, we'll have to press the Alt key.
Ribbon tabs, tab control expanded. Home tab selected Alt, H2 of 10.
Then your right arrow to insert.
Insert tab selected Alt, N3 of 10.
Then we're tabbing through until we hear tables.
Insert grouping. Blank page button at page break button. Tables grouping. Table collapse to table is a great way to organize information within your document.
And there is telling you a table is a great way to organize information in your document. Fine. That's what we want. Enter.
Table data grid. 1x1 table grouping. 1x1 table 1 of 80.
And as soon as you press enter on tables, you get this dialog box, and you're placed in this area where you can create the number of columns you want in your table and create the number of rows you want in your table. Right now it says 1x1, which really is one cell in your table currently. So if you were to press enter right now, you would get one cell in your table, which means one column, one row. But okay, I want a table with 3 columns and 3 rows. Now, to increase the number of columns, which of course we know columns go across, columns go down, but to increase their number, you'd have to go to the right. So I want 3 columns. I'm gonna go to the right to here 3.
2x1 table 2 of 80. 3x1 table 3 of 80.
Okay, now it's saying 3x1, which means 3 columns, still 1 row. We want to increase the number of rows now, so I'm going to use my down arrow to increase the number of rows, and again I want 3 rows.
3x2 table 3x3 table 23 of 80.
All right, now it's saying 3x3, which means 3 columns, 3 rows. That's what I want. So that's what I want. I'm just going to press enter on it.
Microsoft Word document edit multi-line table with 3 rows and 3 columns, level 1 row 1 column 1 page 1 section 1.
All right, and the table with 3 columns and 3 rows is immediately placed into your document. No hassle, right? Now, to what we did a while ago, we used our right arrow to increase the number of rows. Obviously, to use the left arrow going in the opposite direction would decrease the number of columns. And we had used our down arrow to increase the number of rows. Well, of course, to use the up arrow, which means moving in the opposite direction, would decrease the number of rows, right? Also, that quick method that we just used to input the table into our document actually has a limitation, because you can only use it to create a table which has a maximum of 10 columns and a maximum of 8 rows. Right? We look later on how we can create a bigger table, but for now we just wanted a 3x3 table, so we are fine. Okay, let us now look at navigating the table. So of course, you can use your arrow keys to go up and down and across through the table as you wish. So I'm going to use my right arrow.
Column 2. Line feed.
And you see it goes into column 2. It tells you that it has switched into column 2. Let's right arrow again.
Column 3.
And it says column 3. Let me use my left.
Column 2.
It goes back into column 2. Fine. Let's go down now.
Row 2.
Now it tells me row 2 because of instead of switching columns, now I'm switching rows. So it tells me row 2. I'm going to go back up.
Row 1.
And it says row 1. So using your left and right arrows will allow you to switch between columns. Using your up and down arrows will allow you to switch between rows. Now, let us look at something a little different. Let's get to
column 1.
That's column 1, but I want to go down to the last row in column 1.
Row 2.
That's row 2. Let's go to row 3.
Row 3 blind.
Now, row 3 has the word blind. I typed in the word blind into row 3. Still column 1, but row 3, right? So I'm going to try and use my right arrow to switch into column 2. Let's see what happens. Pressing right.
L.
It's telling me L.
I.
So now, because the cell here has been populated with information, meaning that I have actually typed words or a word into this cell, using the left and right arrow does not allow me to move easily or jump easily from one column to the next, right? And that is where your table keys become important, because you will find that once you begin to put information into the table, moving through it with just the arrow keys alone will not suffice, right? So I call them the table keys. You're going to hold down your Control and Alt, holding those two keys down, and then I'm going to use my arrow keys as usual. So I have my Control Alt down, pressing up with it.
Row 2.
And it switches into row 2. Let me go back down, Control Alt down.
Row 3 blind.
And it says blind. Now I'm going to use my right arrow. Will it switch into the column 2? I'm using my Control Alt right.
Column 2 accessibility.
Right. So using Control Alt right arrow jumps me immediately from column 1 to column 2, and it announces all of what is in column 2. It's not actually going through the letters or the characters in column 2, right? Let's try column 3.
Column 3 tips.
Right. So I had pressed a while ago Control Alt right once more, and it jumped into column 3. Let me use Control Alt left.
Column 2 accessibility.
And it jumped back to column 2, which has accessibility. Fine. So your table key, so usually without any information in the table, the arrow keys will work fine to move between columns and rows. However, if you begin to input information, type words and so on, it would be easier for you to then apply your table keys, which what I call the table keys, Control Alt, and use those in conjunction with your arrow keys to move through would make it easier. All right, so now let us look at how we can move through the column using our tab key. The tab key will move you from column to column to column, and when that row is finished, when there are no more columns to switch to in that particular row, it will jump down to the next row and again begin to move across column to column to column until that row is finished, and so on, right? So right now I have placed my cursor in row 2, column 2, right? And I'm going to use, row 2, column 1. I'm going to use my tab key. Where does it take me?
Column 2.
So it takes me to column 2, tab again.
Column 3.
Takes me to column 3, tab again.
Row 3, column 1 blind.
Right. So because there were no other columns to jump to in row 2, it just jumped down to the following row, which is row 3, having the word blind. And again, if I continue to press the tab, it will go across again. So tab again.
Column 2 accessibility.
And tab again.
Column 3 tips.
right? And it says column 3 tips. Now, this column or this cell that we're now in is the very last cell in this particular table that I have. This cell that has the word tips is in the very last cell. It is in column 3, row 3. So right now, if I am to press my tab key once more, what will happen? Because there is no other row to jump to, Microsoft Word will actually create a new row for us, right? So let me press the tab key and see what happens.
Table with 4 rows and 3 columns, level 1, row 4, column 1.
Right, notice it just said table with 4 rows and 3 columns. We initially only had a table with 3 rows, yes? But because we went to the last cell of the table and then hit the tab key, it created a new row for us. So the tab key will allow you to move through the table sequentially. But when it gets to the very last cell in a table, if you press it once more, it will add a new row, and it will continue to do that every time you go to the last cell in your table. All right, let us now look at some options that appear in our context menu and in our main ribbons when we are focused on a table. So when you are on a table, yes, some new things appear in our context menu. So let's look at our context menu first. And we know that to do that, we have to use our applications key, or you can actually use the keystroke Shift F10, right? So applications key.
Cut unavailable, cut.
And you hear cut. Now that is a standard option. I'm going to down arrow until I begin to hear things that apply to the table.
Copy unavailable, paste options, search, synonyms collapsed, translate, insert collapsed I.
Insert, and it says collapsed. This only appears when there's a table, okay? And it says collapsed, which means that if you were to press a right arrow or the right arrow, a smaller submenu would appear. So I'm going to press right.
Insert columns to the left, add a new column directly to the left of the current column.
Right, and the first option you're hearing right upon pressing right arrow is insert a column to the left. So wherever you left your cursor, so if you had left your cursor in column 1 and you came to this option and you press enter on it, it would actually put another column to the left of column 1, which would mean that your current column 1 would become column 2, right? That makes sense? Yes. Let us down arrow and see what else is in this smaller submenu.
Insert columns to the right, insert columns to the right.
Insert columns to the right, which is, the opposite. So instead of putting the column to the left of your current column, it would put this new column to the right. So you decide which one you want. I'm just showing you how you can modify and add more columns to your table. Right? Let me down arrow.
Insert rows above, add a new row directly above the current
row. So this
okay.
Now has to do with rows. You can actually add a new row as well. So whichever row you left your cursor in, if you were to press enter here, it would put a row above that one, right?
Insert rows below,
And this is the opposite. You would insert a row below where you left your cursor.
Insert cells.
And you can actually tell it to insert one cell at a time as well. So not an entire row or not an entire column, but you can insert a cell. So you can play around with this to see how it works out in your table. I'm just showing you the different options that come up with the context menu that you can use to modify your table. I'm going to press left arrow to close this smaller submenu.
Insert collapsed I.
And it says insert collapse. We're back on insert. All right, so let's continue down now in this main part of the context menu.
Delete cells. D.
So this says delete cells. So above it we had insert, which meant that we could put more cells in or put more columns in or put more rows into our table. This option now, which says delete, means that we can actually remove a column or remove a row or remove a cell from our table, right? Now this did not say collapsed, so it's not a submenu. So we'd have to actually press enter to see the options which come within this. So enter.
Delete cells dialog. Shift cells left radio button checked Alt plus L.
So shift cells left, you'll find that you will remove a cell to the left if you do that. Let me down arrow.
Shift cells up radio button checked Alt plus U.
Shift cells up, you will remove a cell that is above. So you would have to play around with this and see how it actually affects your table.
Delete entire row, radio button, check Alt plus R.
You can delete an entire row. So wherever you left your cursor in before coming into the context menu, if you were to press enter on this option, it will delete that row that you were in.
Delete entire column, radio button, check Alt plus.
And that if wherever you left your cursor, if you were to enter on this option that says delete entire column, that column that you were in will be deleted.
Shift cells left, radio button.
And it has started back over with when I use my down arrow. All right, let me escape and come out of this.
Document one word. Microsoft Word document, edit multi-line table with.
Right, and we're back in our document and back on our table. And yes, there are other options in the context menu that you can explore, but those are the two important ones that I wanted to point out. Let us now look at the main menu ribbons, right? So yes, the context menu does have a few options which we just saw: insert or delete cells, columns, rows, but you'll find that the main menu has way more other options that you can apply to your table. All right, and just like the context menu, when you are on a table, two new options appear for the main ribbon. In particular, two new tabs on the upper ribbon appear. All right, so let us see. I'm pressing my Alt to access my main menu.
Ribbon tabs, tab control expanded. Table tools grouping. Design tab selected Alt Y JT 11 of 12.
And the first thing you hear is table tools grouping, and it says design is the first one in the table tools grouping. This did not or will not appear when there is no table. So the design is the first one, the table tools grouping. Let me go right to here, the other one.
Layout tab selected Alt Y J.
Layout tab. Again, these two, the design that we just heard and this one now, layout, will not appear if you are not in a table. All right, and just like every other time when you are navigating the main menu, if you want to hear the options on the lower ribbon, you'd have to then tab through. So right now I am on layout. I just right arrow to layout. If I want to hear the options on the layout, I would just start using my tab key. I actually have a video explaining how to navigate the main menu ribbons itself, a video just explaining that. So if you're not quite sure what we're talking about here, about how to navigate it, you can actually check out that video. I will put the link in the description. All right, I'm on layout. I'm going to tab through to hear some of the options under layout.
Layout grouping, table grouping. Select collapse, select the current cell, row, column, or entire table. Alt J L K.
Right, so you can actually choose to select different. If you were to enter on this, you would get the option to select the whole table, select a column, select a row, or just to select one cell, whatever it is, right? Let me tab through for you to hear others.
View grid lines toggle button not pressed. View table grid lines show or hide the grid lines in the table.
You can actually decide if the grid lines of your table should show when your table is printed. All right, so you could use this. If you press enter on it, it would hide. Press enter again, it would tell it to show the grid lines. Let me tab again.
Properties. Button table properties show the
that
table
would open the table properties dialog box. Let me move on.
Draw grouping. Draw table toggle button.
So this has to do with drawing tables. We don't really play with this when we are visually impaired. So let's move on.
Eraser toggle. Rows and columns. Insert above button. Insert.
Rows and
delete,
columns.
Collapse, delete rows, columns, cells, or the entire table. Alt J L D.
Right, and you see now that we're beginning to hear options to delete rows, to delete columns. Yes, we had heard this in the context menu, but it's also up here in the main menu ribbon. Let me move on. What else is there?
Insert above button, insert rows above.
This is inserting.
Insert below button, insert rows. Insert left button, insert right button, insert cells.
Again, we had heard these options in the context menu, but let's move on. Tab again.
Merge grouping. Merge cells button unavailable. Merge.
So you can actually choose to merge cells with this option. Merging a cell, meaning that you can merge two cells. Two cells are beside each other. You might want to merge them so that they become one, right? 2, 3, whatever cells. You would select them and then enter on this, and it would make those cells become one. Tab.
Split cells. Button split cells.
That's the opposite of merging, splitting the cells.
Split table button, split table. Cell size grouping. Auto fit collapsed automatically.
And then now you're going into cell size and so on. So there are a myriad of options that you can choose to use to modify your table. All right. But that is getting into more advanced stuff if you want to do it. Let's escape. All right. So the last thing I want to show you is how to input a table that has more than 10 columns and more than 8 rows, because remember, the method we used before is a quick method where we just use the right arrow to increase the number of columns and the down arrow to increase the number of rows. However, that is limited. You can only create a table that has 10 columns and 8 rows. Of course, we just learned that even if you created a table with those limitations, you can create it and then go into your context menu or go into your main menu ribbons to increase the number of rows or columns as you wish. However, if you do want to create a table from the get-go with a larger number of columns and rows than that, you can also do it easily. So let us now do it. This time, instead of using, well, we are going to be using the main menu ribbons, but instead of, pressing Alt, right arrow to insert and then tabbing through to tables, I am going to use the key tips, which gets us there quicker. Again, if you don't understand what I mean by using the key tips for the main menu ribbons, go and check out the video that I explain that. The link will be in the description. I'm going to use the key tips, which is Alt N T. Alt,
Ribbon tab,
then
tab, control,
N, then T.
Table data grid, 1x1 table grouping.
Good, and we are back at the space where we had gone before, where we had the 1x1. Instead of using this option though, where we right arrow to increase columns or down arrow to increase rows, we're going to use the tab key to get past this area.
Insert table, Alt N T I.
And this says insert table. That's what we want. I'm going to press enter on this.
Insert table dialog, table size, number of columns, edit Alt plus C, selected 5.
And the first thing it gives you, it says number of columns. So you can actually tell it how many number of columns you want. I'm going to put 15.
1. Selection removed. 5.
Right? So I actually typed the number of columns there, or number of rows, was it? The number of columns, sorry. And you can actually either type it as I just did, or you can press the down arrow. But I typed it already, so let's tab to the next one.
Number of rows, edit Alt plus R, selected 2.
Right, number of rows, and it says 2. For this one, instead of typing, I'm going to show you that the arrow keys can also help you to increase or decrease the number of rows, right? I'm going to up arrow to increase it to 10.
4, 5, 6, 9, 10.
Good.
Selected.
So now I have a table with 15 columns, which I selected before. And now this one says 10 rows. I'm done. I'm just going to tab to OK.
Fixed column width. Auto fit. Remember dimension. OK button.
Enter and OK.
Document to Word. Microsoft Word document, edit multi-line table with 10 rows and 15 columns. Level 1 row 1 column 1 page 1 section 1.
Right. And it tells you a table has been inputted into your document with 15 columns and 10 rows. You can go ahead and now put in your information, use the table however you want it, and navigate it with your Control Alt and arrow keys. All right, hope this lesson was beneficial to you. Remember that you can go to blindaccessibilitytips.com to get this lesson in text. The link will be in the description. Thanks for listening.